Hello, my name is Willem, and my first interaction with Go, I still remember, was about 19 years ago. I studied mathematics, and one time before vector calculus started, there was a fellow student who introduced to us there will be a beginner course about Go, and she finished her talk. And then the professor, Marco Martens, who is now teaching in New York, he didn't start the course directly, but he said something about, yeah, you have to learn this game. It's magical. It's cosmic. You have to learn this. And then he started to teach. So I thought, if even the teacher, which I really liked, is endorsing this game, I have to learn it. So I went to the beginner course. I learned the game. I still remember I asked a lot of baby questions like, hey, why can't computers do this? And oh, is this not Joseki? Is there some commission in Japan deciding what is Joseki? And I was every time amazed when I thought, oh, you have to do this against the monkey jump. And then why doesn't it work this time? So yeah, I played my first tournament. I looked it up in December 2005 as a 19Q. I lost most of my games and I'm still playing, still love the game.
Willem, thank you so much for that introduction. Hey, everybody. It is Travis. We're back for season 2. We have a really fun lineup of mostly interviews and then some sort of serial conversations with some key figures that you know about various things. I took a lot of feedback from all of you. Thank you for letting me know about what else you want to hear about, who you want to hear from. And so this season, we're interviewing former professional Go players, current professional Go players, professors, people who are experts in the history of Go, all sorts of things, organizers. So I think you're going to enjoy this. Next up is our first conversation. I got to sit down with Michael Chen, who is a one-dan professional through the North American Go Federation. He became a professional a few seasons ago. And he was nice enough to give me some time, and I got to learn all about his background. So let's go to that interview now. Michael, thanks so much for joining me.
Happy to be here.
Maybe we can start by talking about your early years. You have a really great interview in the September-October 2023 edition of the European Go Journal, where you talk about how your story starts with Go. Back when you were 7 years old in China, you would watch your father and your uncle play. What about the game made you want to start playing and then keep playing it?
Well, thanks to my dad, he let me win a couple of games early on, so I thought I was pretty good at the game. So a little bit of false confidence there to start. One of the things that left a big impression on me early on was they were intentionally serious. So to leave an impression on me like this is an intense thing. And then they were going over the game, and then they said there was a ladder, and it was a 2-stone ladder. I forgot who ran the stones out to 3 stones, and then they said, oh my God, that was when the game fell apart. I said, 1 extra stone, does it really matter that much? And I was like, wow, one stone could make such a big difference. And that was a very good lead in to a curiosity angle. And so 2 things. One was the curiosity angle. How could one move or 1 stone, 1 extra that stone be that important? And secondly, it was that false confidence. So I felt I was really good. I went to my grandpa's house. I played grandfather. He was a real beginner, but then I found out I was actually more of a beginner than him, which was very surprising because I thought I was fairly close to my dad's level. You know. So that's how it started. After a couple of sessions like this, I was just watching. I was like, just watching out of my own accord. And then I went to this after school Go class. The equivalent is in the US elementary schools, we have enrichment class after school or
Yes.
something similar. I went to one of those like like 7 p.m. and then a bunch of kids go into this kind of like Kumon, the mass tutoring
Yes.
places. Yeah, kind of like those mass kids and stuff. So that's how I started.
Michael, was that commonplace where you lived in China for kids to take up things like Go, among other things? Like you said, at that class, there was martial arts, there was other areas.
Yeah, it was a like an organized center devoted to like after school kids activities, basically. So there was actually chess, Western chess, Chinese chess, Go, martial arts. That's kind of like the Taekwondo class in the US or karate class in the US.
Sure.
Those were very popular in the 1990s here and stuff. So yeah, it was a whole organized school, not a school, like like classes kind of a thing. The teachers presumably make a few extra bucks. This was 1996 or so, 1997, around then. I lived in a pretty big city, so this kind of thing was easier. And as you can imagine, there's a lot more kids in the big cities.
Sure.
I lived in Chengdu.
When you were doing that as this young kid, at what point do you start to notice, wow, I have a knack for this. I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah. When I started beating my classmates, of course. I think a lot of it was watching my parents play, and then everyone was about the same, just beginning. And watching my parents play, I was a little bit, I had a little bit more experience, even against some of the kids who had more lessons, who was there the last semester. I ascribed much of my early interest in the game to being able to win against the other kids. And then I attribute to winning against the other kids with it felt like I desired to win the game a little bit more than the others, even though they may have a little bit more knowledge. I had a very good late game compared to these kids. They would learn some josekis and life and death problems, but when it came to trying to win the game, I ascribed that a little bit to watching the parents and uncle play a lot. I imagine what must have happened was my competition was playing like one space moves or no space moves, one after the other, and then having watched some of these higher level games, I was doing things a little faster in the middle game. It was a lot of fun.
That's so cool to hear that. One thing that you mentioned in previous interviews is you credit being able to play many games online for your ability to really improve and rank dramatically once you arrived in the US. So I believe you said you were a 2 Dan when you were about 10 years of age, and then you reached all the way up to 6 Dan only within, I believe, a few years. Do you prefer playing online or in person?
I highly, highly recommend playing the game however you can. So it's very good. I understand there is a common perception that in real life, like face-to-face games is a better quality, like better fight kind of a thing, a better struggle against the opponent. However, to get together, you have to drive, usually you have to travel, and then it's a lot slower, it's more serious. So in the space, it takes takes to have one of these higher quality battles, you can play many more online. So I don't see much of a preference either way for me. If you can play 3 or 4 online games in the space of one face-to-face game, usually you prefer the more numbers of games just because of the quantity over quality kind of a thing. I totally understand both sides of the equation. And I went to some Go clubs in New Jersey as a teenager as well. And those were very, very fun Go clubs.
Interesting. So I appreciate your point about the fact that you can get so many more games in online versus playing in person, which can also be great because Go is a pure skills-based game. There is no luck involved. So if you can benefit from that repetition and getting more exposure and volume of playing, that's going to really help.
Yes, yes, totally. Some ways to improve in Go. Usually, people take some kind of lessons or they watch some YouTube videos, which is the same as taking a lesson, listening in, taking in some ideas, and then the practice really helps one to execute all kinds of plans that you might have, and you can form your own understanding of the game, how to play, how to maximize your chances, things like that. So the amount of practice is extremely helpful, and the advent of the internet age in the 2000s was very, very helpful to players in Asia as well. The top professionals, every one of them benefited tremendously from the being able to play on the internet.
So you mentioned that a big regret that you had when you were living in China was that you weren't able to study at a traditional Go school. And you did attend the Feng Yun school in the US. And on one of your recent streams, you were talking about the fact that it's really quite a different experience than a Go school in Asia. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Go is a lot more popular in Asia, China, Korea, Japan, than it is in the States and Europe, and everywhere else in the world. So there are a lot more Go schools in China and Korea and Japan. When I said I kind of regret not going to, the full training in
Mm,
the, I mean the top most serious
mm,
kinds of Go dojos where students spend an extraordinarily large amount of time. Those are also relatively rare. Amongst all the Go schools. For example, we talked about the after school Go school that's like once or twice a week that I did go to. That's very similar to like the Fengyun Go school and a
mm.
couple of schools set up in the States and a couple in Europe as well. Those are very similar. And in China, there's probably a couple of thousand of these Go schools.
Wow.
Every town has a couple, and then there's like many, many cities. So, it's probably a couple of thousand there. Yes. And so what I what I meant by that was that, the real serious players, some of them in Japan, they were known as inseis, people who are studying to become professionals. They spend, at least half of their day, in school, in Go school, maybe half of the day in regular school, but, at least half of the time in Go school. Certainly, like over the summer, they would spend most of the time in the Go school. There's only maybe less than 10 of these in China, maybe 3 to 5 in Korea, and likewise in Japan. So these are like for the most serious Go
Mm.
insei kind of people. Nowadays, after progressing in the game for a long time, most of my competition usually have some kind of training in one of these dojos. So I feel like if I had had a chance to do that when I was very young, I probably would be stronger at the game.
Interesting. It's funny because you just had on one of your streaming episodes on Twitch, You talked about how one of these Chinese Go schools contacted the North American Go Federation and got yourself, along with a whole bunch of amateur players from the American side, to do these tournaments with you or do these matches.
Yes. These
And
are these are friendly matches aimed to get Go players together and have some fun matches, and they are relatively good training for the students for these Go schools. Of course, my Go school was very less advanced compared to
okay.
these. The particular Go schools, I had two of these friendlies recently. Must be because school is out, summer
Summer
vacation started.
vacation.
So
Yes.
these Go schools, it's like they're like beginning, their chance, and then organize some kind of events. The particular two Go schools they're not quite at the dojos that we talked about, but
Okay.
they're
Not that
much
level.
more, but they're much more advanced than the kinds of Go schools that I've been to. So one of these Go schools would probably be in the top 10. The other is probably also around there. I wouldn't be surprised. So we got into some very nice and fun friendlies with some of these Go schools, and the skill levels of their students were extremely, extremely high.
Maybe for a second, we can transition to you becoming a North American professional back in 2023. How do you feel like your new status has helped you spread your ideas about the game to amateurs and to newcomers?
This is the best part about my becoming a professional. I have already been invited to one Mexican Go Congress where they
Wow.
invited me as a pro to talk about the game, and
How cool is that?
so that was one 3-day weekend where I spread a lot of ideas about how to play the game to an audience, and that's one very, very direct thing. And at the US Go Congress, a one week gathering of Go players, best Go vacation. So I'm attending now for the first time as a professional, and I will be giving lectures or talks. So this is another way that I'm able to spread a lot of my ideas about how to play the game, how to ideas about the game, how to play the game, how to win in the game, how to play better, how to understand better, how to talk about the game more intelligently, and things like that. So I found a lot more ability to get my views on the game across. Since I'm relatively willing to do this kind of dissemination, I'm getting a lot of opportunities to do this. Another note in terms of competitions, as a professional, I'm able to participate in a lot more competitions. I have, for example, professionals in the North America versus the European professionals, this kinds of events. So this is the competition angle where becoming a professional has exposed a lot more play for me. And the one last thing was when we talked about the friendlies with other Go schools and Go clubs. Having a professional is very, it's very cool to play a professional from anywhere. So it's nice to be able to make these events a little bit more exciting for the kids. And they do win a lot, and so the kids are very, very good. So that could be something good for everyone as well. It's like, hey, I beat the North American pro. Look how good I am.
It's a scalp they can get, right? Oh, look, I took this this professional. So you have a bigger target on your back. So it sounds like the professional status for you has actually really accomplished a few things that you already really enjoy. One is the disseminating and sharing of what it's like to be a professional in Go, but also your competitive spirit, because you now get invited to these top level Asian tournaments. I believe the Lanka Cup was one in which you participated. And so it sounds like it's really doing a lot of those things. So in the past, you've mentioned that you feel like your ideas with Go are unconventional. How do you think becoming a professional has legitimized those ideas and your unconventional approach?
People say that I am a bit of an extreme player, but I think in actuality, I just come across as a little bit more aggressive than the typical
Okay,
player.
I see.
So it's really not very much out of the ordinary.
Okay.
So and you'll see that the ideas that I have about the game that I do in my talks will be very, very mainstream. And the one thing that is a little bit unconventional is the amount of aggression or the amount of disregard for safety or risk averseness that I do not display versus the average player.
I see.
So in that sense, people tend to think of me as a little bit more of an unconventional type. And I am this way on the Go board for a variety of reasons. One of the main ones was that in my early years in the first Go after school class, I owed much of my success to being a little bit more aggressive in the middle game and then being able to win games because I was always striving for a lot while the opponents were usually striving for a little bit less. And so that's what kind of developed my Go playing style. So that of course, I took that and then ran with this later. I'm by far not the most aggressive or the most unbalanced Go player. So it's just that I come across as a little bit more aggressive than usual. One of the other reasons I am this way is because when, as I mentioned, the professional training, the end game training that I lack makes me need to have a much larger margin of victory in order to be assured of a victory. And the ways that I'm always optimistic about my moves does not help. So in that sense, I probably, to put it into more, to give an example, I ask for 15 points of lead rather than 5 points of lead.
I see.
So that's one of the reasons why I come across as a little bit more aggressive than usual. One other feature is that due to the lack of life and death training that these top dojos generally put their Go students through, and having not had this training, I usually, in the reading fights, I usually come out a little bit I struggle a little bit at this stage of the game, the reading fights. And so my fighting would seem a little bit weak at times or just too much of an overplay at times. But this is what I have to do in order to cope with my opponents. So that's my primary thing. I need a little bit more of a margin of safety for my victories. I approach the game as a kind of a race. I have to try to run as fast as possible. And so that's why I come across as a little bit unconventional due to how aggressive I am.
I appreciate that analogy of coming out the gate more quickly, right? So that if you have some areas that you feel less strong in at the end of the race, you still have enough of a lead. Last year, when you became a professional, you talked about in your interview with Jamie Tang that you felt like you'd actually been playing at around the same level for the past 15 years or so. So I guess the question is, now that you've become pro, you've been able to get exposure to playing other professionals in Asia more, playing in the tournaments and things like that. Have you noticed any changes to your skill level in specific ways? Or does it feel like more of a confirmation of, okay, yes, this is the level that I'm at?
This this is the biggest regret or unfortunate part of becoming a pro. It does not actually make you play stronger Go. I wish it did, of course, but I'm finding that just having a title bestowed, a slip of paper, does not make me stronger as a player. So and I became a relatively strong amateur player in the States, around 15 years ago. And of course, I actually have gotten stronger, but my opponents have also gotten stronger.
Sure.
And the ones that did not stopped being my opponents. I still feel like I struggle against the competition just as much now as before. Now, in some ways, I feel like I struggle even more than before. When I first became a very strong player, I was a very fighting, like righteous player. I was not as unreasonable. I was get some thickness and then fight and then win the fight and so on. After I became a strong player, I turned into this other way where I'm always doing exchanges and trying to stay fast instead of staying strong in the sense of local fights in the game itself. So I attribute a lot of this to exposure to other, ideas from books, ideas from things. And I lament the deaths of the young Michael, the fearless Michael, and so on. If I could only play the same way I did when I was 20. However, deep down in my heart, I know that I had to change the way I played due to a variety of factors, and it was my way of adapting to stronger and stronger opponents. So, I don't have much professional training or, long times devoted, to studying the game or life and death problems like many of my opponents. So as a result, I have had to do this shift from fighting face to face, punch for punch, into this other slightly more unconventional style. But after becoming a professional, one thing that it has not helped my game was before I would say I'm ahead by 20 points or so, and then I know this next sequence is a bad sequence, and I would lose 10 points, but I would win the game. I would have no problem choosing that whip out kind of win the game kind of strategy. And now I'm like, I'm a P now. I'm a pro now. I have a P next to my name, so
That's right.
I can't play these give up moves.
How
So,
interesting. So
so I
there's
have
social pressure involved for sure. Yes.
it's mostly in my head, but yes, it's a lot like that. And but even though becoming pro has not made me stronger just by itself, it has made me spend a little bit more time on the game and then do PowerPoint presentations on how to play the game and so on in preparation for my lectures. And so all this is good, and I feel like this is very positive, and I am very happy to take part in these activities.
One of the things that I really like that you've talked about, and I think is actually quite striking and different from maybe others, is that you are a big proponent of studying by doing what is the most enjoyable thing to you. So whether it's playing life and death puzzles, if you like that, do it. If you like playing games, play games, or if you like reading books or whatever it might be. And one thing that you talked about was that with life and death puzzles, you like to sometimes just go straight to the answers instead of getting sort of bogged down on something that might not be particularly fun, if that's just not what you like to do. So in your mind, like, what is the point at which a Go player needs to actually stray from this concept of like doing the most enjoyable thing?
Well, so Go is a hobby, and it's very similar to a sport. So most people, if doing this is not very fun, it will affect our subconscious and everything. So we always want to do the most fun activity possible. That just makes sense.
Sure.
In terms of the how to get strong at the game, sometimes So the Go schools all have particular ways of teaching the kids and students and new players, and a lot of it involves, you have to do this even if it's not fun. However, in America, where many of the newcomers are adults, it's harder to, make an adult do whatever he or she does not like to do, and so so it's better to just propose to try the most enjoyable part of the game as much as possible. When I got to a certain level, I realized that having a certain amount of life and death problems knowledge is needed, and the quickest way I can think of to get better at that was to go straight to the answers and spend very little time on life and death, because the part of the game that I enjoy the most is playing the actual matches. I log on online and then I play a few matches. So that was my way of compromise. I do a little bit of the stuff that I do not find enjoyable, but I can go straight to the answers. And the effect is debatable. I'm still weaker than most of my competition at the hard reading part, but it has allowed me to cope with very strong readers without doing that much reading myself. So, of course, at the end of the day, we all play the game to enjoy the game. So it just makes perfect sense to spend as much time enjoying the game as possible.
So, Michael, you're well known as a streamer and as a content provider on Twitch, on YouTube. Just going through some of your streams and some of your videos, it's so cool to see. I love how casual and laid back your energy and your streams are. You're just, for example, like the other day, you come back and you're like, hey, I just got back from, I have a meal. I'm bringing a hot dog back and you literally just start playing a game while you're having this meal. And then you're also giving, the context of, oh, this is a person that, I played before and, I lost in the past. And it just comes through how much you enjoy the process of helping other people understand what you're doing, but also playing at this very high level, which is impressive because I feel like I need total focus. I need everything blocked out when I play. What do you enjoy about that process of streaming and doing the content, and how does it affect your play?
Yes, that this relates heavily to doing what you enjoy about the game. And one of the things that a lot of people who are very serious about the game, one of the traits that they have is I have to play at my best, and I have to get ready, go through this whole process. And this just comes back to, and this relates a little bit to the first thing we talked about, in-person versus online games, is that I'm a big proponent of even if you can't play at your best, it is very worthwhile to get some practice in. For one thing, this will alleviate all of your anxiety about, I know people who spend 20 minutes getting ready and, pumped up for the game, and
Yes.
yeah, and getting ready that's very good, and you can play a very serious game and it's like you're putting a lot of emotions into it, and it's perfectly good. In terms of a practice perspective, that is one very, very serious game. Now I look at it and I say, well, I can play 2 to 3 less serious games at the same time. Is it as good of a practice? It is not, but I can get double the amount of practice. So it's a trade-off that I'm very willing to make. And this is another good side effect of this, is that it allows you to spend a little bit more time on this. If you're able to jump right in, you can spend more time on the game rather than spend the time getting pumped up.
And I really appreciate that attitude because you're very much a figure in the Go community. And so for you to show that to people and say, hey, I'm going to do this in not a very, very serious way every single time I play, it almost legitimizes it. It almost makes it okay. Oh, great. Michael Chen's doing that. And, Michael Chen's awesome. Like, wow, I can do that too.
Yes,
Because there
yes.
does seem to be this strange dynamic, specifically with Go, where we all do this. I mean, you know this well. You've been playing this game for decades. This concept that we feel like we need to only play when we are totally focused and fully ready to go. You're saying, hey, there are benefits to playing even if you're not in
Yes,
tip-top shape.
exactly. Exactly. In soccer, playing football, you can play when you're tired, and that's very good training, right? So,
Sure.
in fact,
Yeah.
most of exercise is doing things when you're very tired. So in Go, it's gonna be the same. This is also another way that I deal with long losing streaks is because I understand that I often do not play at my best. I'm perfectly okay to have a losing streak and also to continue playing afterwards. And that's how I deal with all my losing streaks. I keep playing until I start winning.
And I'm sure that at your level, now that you have reached this new status, I'm sure the fact that you're getting exposure to playing new and different styles and even stronger players, it must have that effect where you might feel at times, wow, like I'm losing, or I'm losing more. But then I'm sure undoubtedly that's strengthening you. It's probably pulling you up as a player. Is that fair?
I think so. A lot of professionals on the Fox server now do play with me now because I have a pro account. So that's everything you said is true.
Do you notice that the style and the nuance and the level of playing is different, is higher?
Yes, of course. The pro accounts on Fox are much stronger than the non-pro accounts. I very rarely beat my professional opponents. So,
But that's still
it's very.
it's just still very cool to hear that you can understand that level and that nuance because it really is different at that level. So it's really impressive. Who's your favorite Go player of all time and why?
Favorite Go player? Oh man, there's a bunch. I would say I have to say this one guy is called Xiao from China. He wrote a book called The 36 Stratagems to Go. That book was very influential on me. It made me swing my Go playing style from that very righteous player and sort of into the dark side of Go, where I'm about all kinds of tricks and trying to misdirect the opponent and things like that. So for better or for worse, his interestingly translated book really affected my my Go playing style. So I am gonna have to give this one to him.
Next question. What's one single thing you wish the US Go community took a step towards doing in the next year, let's say, to increase popularity, increase exposure that you don't think has been done yet?
People try to grow the community a lot. One of the regrets about the Go community is that the chess community really grew by a lot through online streaming, mostly on Twitch. And through the pandemic, when people started staying home a lot, they started playing chess, and a lot of players joined in the 2020 to 2022. And in Go, it was just barely, the Go community, I don't think grew that much. So where chess cashed in on this opportunity, where it became an opportunity, in Go, we just basically was not able to take advantage. In terms of what to do, I think there's nothing much to do there. It's just that as the game gets more and more popular, and as people know about this more and more, the Go community will start growing. And the one thing, this is not a specific action item, it's the amount of casual Go players. We had talked in this podcast about how for many players, Go is a very serious game that has to be played at their best conditions. If we had a lot more casual Go players who played a whole lot, this would really, I think that would benefit the Go community very much. Increase the amount of casual Go players who are just out to have a good time.
I love that. That's a great message, particularly for somebody like yourself, where you dedicated much of your life to this game, among other things, and just trying to get it more ubiquitous, get it more fun, and just people enjoying the process. I love that. Last question. How did your wife come to learn about your passion for Go and its role in your life? Was it something she knew about from the beginning, or how did that go?
Yes, I made sure she knew from the beginning. We met because two of our friends who are a couple introduced us, and they both play Go, and they're both Dan players. One is particularly strong. It's I think American 7 Dan and a 4 Dan. So these two people introduced the two of us. So she knew from the beginning. And on our third date, I brought a Go board and Go stones to her apartment, and we showed her how to play. So yeah. It was very romantic, I have to say. I'm not sure if she agreed.
Oh, that's great. Well, Michael, I really want to thank you for the time and going through these questions with me. So thanks again. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk with Xiao Dai and Gazza White from the Pro Baduk Weiqi podcast. They were nice enough to talk with me a little bit about the current #1 professional player in the world and what exactly makes Shin Jin-seo so very special. Take a listen.
The thing I find very fascinating is that the current kind of undisputed world #1 player in the pro world is Shin Jin-seo of Korea. And he's got a bit of a remarkable story. So I'm looking at the Wikipedia page because I can't recall this off the top of my head. He was born on the 17th of March, 2000. He was born after the millennial bug. And one thing that was very fascinating about him was that since the late 80s, arguably starting from the mid 90s, Korea has sat at the world #1 spot, almost kind of undisputed until maybe around 2015. And what's fascinating was that if you recall back in 2016, there was a AlphaGo versus Lee Sedol match. Part of the reason why they chose Lee Sedol to play with AlphaGo was because Lee Sedol was widely considered the top player in the world for a period. Before Lee Sedol, there was Lee Chang-ho, undisputed world #1, again a Korean. And before that, arguably, you could say the world #1 was Cho Hun-hyun or maybe Cho Shi-kun, who plays in Japan but is ethnically Korean. So you had a Korean player at the top of the world since the mid-90s. But then maybe a little bit of an accident happens starting in the 2010, somewhere around there, where you would say that the world #1 spot was taken over by a Chinese player by the name of Kerje, again, a very famous player. So as you can imagine from a Korean perspective, they kind of lost the world #1 spot. And during that period where Kerje was dominant in the world of professional Go, the top Korean player was a bloke by the name of Park Jun-hwan, who's by all counts a very, very strong player. For example, he's got 6 international titles to his name, if I'm not wrong. Or was it 5, Gazza?
He's got 5 world majors, yeah.
And if you think about that, most pro players don't even achieve 1 world major title. So I guess from a Korean perspective, maybe he was considered a slight disappointment because he was not a superstar like Lee Sedol, not a superstar like Lee Chang-ho. So I guess Koreans were for maybe a period of 4 or 5 years waiting for their next superstar. And this is delivered by Shin Jin-seo, who is currently the world number one superstar. And I guess that's kind of what fascinates me about Shin Jin-seo, that is that, he kind of came out of a period of, I guess, what you called a slight downturn for Korean Baduk, and has risen up to become the undisputed world number one.
Is my understanding correct that he, from an overall ELO rating, he's quite a bit above everybody else?
Yeah, I think last time I checked the Go ratings, I believe he was roughly around 180 points to 200 points above the second rated player. And to put that into context, I think roughly speaking, 180-point difference roughly equates to winning games at the rate of 75%. So number one versus number two, if they play 4 games, he will win 3 of them. And to put that into even more context, I believe Lee Se-do, who I've referred to as the undisputed world number one, and he's got, I believe, somewhere around 13 world major titles to his name. His win rate was somewhere around, if I'm not wrong, around 67%. So if you win around 67% of your games, you'll be winning 13 world titles and undisputed number one. But now the number one in the world versus number two, according to statistics, you can win about 80% of the game. So that's just incredible.
That's amazing. It actually reminds me of almost like batting averages in American baseball, right? Where they say, oh, if you're batting at 300, you're doing incredibly well. So if you're in a game where you're of equal rank and you win half the time, it sounds like it's a little bit lonely at the top. He's just head and shoulders above the rest.
Something interesting that hit me recently was the statistics quoted by, I believe, Roger Federer. Of course, he's a tennis great. If I remember correctly, he wins about 70% of the games that he plays against other top pros, but he only wins about 52 or 54% of the points. So if you kind of translate that into a Go game, so if you think about Shin Jin-seo winning about maybe 80% of the games that he plays, or 90%, if you translate it to the per move basis, in an average Go game, you're playing 200 and 300 moves. So maybe per move, he's only slightly better than his opponent, but it kind of builds up. If your move is 1% better than your opponent over a game of 200 moves, you're actually a lot better. So a little bit of skill difference at the per move level can translate to large winning percentages and lots of world titles.
How interesting, right? You have that just compounding effect. Slightly better move by half a point or a fraction of a point, it turns into a serious lead.
Exactly.
Something that I wanted to mention about Shin Jin-seo that I heard recently discussed. In Go, there's a fun sort of variant called Pair Go, where a male and a female player will play against another male and female player, and they'll alternate playing moves, but there's no discussion among the moves, so you
can't
play
strategize.
That's right, not during the game. And they have professional versions of this. It's obviously still competitive, but it's a bit of fun. And I think some of the Korean female players were interviewed about this, who they want to be paired with. And most of them preferred to be paired with Park Jun-hwan.
Not Shin Jin-seo.
Yes. Park Jun-hwan, obviously a really strong player, but he has a very sort of smooth, peaceful, but a style that is understandable. Whereas with Shin Jin-seo, a lot of the players, they just say they just can't understand what he's doing. It's just so deep, so complicated that it's really hard to play along with.
Doesn't he have a nickname for being like Mr. AI or something like this?
Yeah, I think his nickname is something like Shin AI.
Or as I like to call him, Shintificial Intelligence. When you talk about like a great player, I sometimes feel that you can't talk about the player without talking about their contemporary rivals. I think, as I mentioned, just before Shin Jin-seo, the Korean number one was Park Jun-hwan. And to put things into context, like Gazza already mentioned, Park Jun-hwan has won 5 world major titles so far. But Shin Jin-seo, at a much younger age, so Shin Jin-seo is currently 24. I think Park Jun-hwan is somewhere around 30. So Shin Jin-seo, at 6 years, Park Jun-hwan's junior, has already won 6 titles. And in an interview, he said his goal was to win 12 or more titles. That's quite ambitious. So to put that into context, the player to have won the most world major titles was Lee Chang-ho at around 17. Next is Lee Se-do at 13. And after that would be Cho Han-hyun at 9. So all the top 3 in terms of title count are all Korean. After that, in the ranking is 2 Chinese players, one Gu Li with 8 titles, and Ke Jie with 8 titles. And of course, you would consider Ke Jie to be maybe a contemporary of Shin Jin-seo, but maybe 3 to 4 years older. And Ke Jie has 8 titles. And I'm pretty sure that Shin Jin-seo would want to win more titles than Ke Jie, especially because they had a little bit of a history, shall we say.
To put that into context in terms of the number of wins of world majors, is it something akin to professional tennis where you win the Australian Open or Wimbledon, that even winning one of them is a huge deal? So if you can win 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's really incredible.
That's a very good comparison. Especially, when you consider in tennis, the majors are considered to be the pinnacle of international professional tennis. The world majors in Go are sort of the highest individual honor.
Now we're going to talk to Ben Mantle, also known as BenKyo. I was able to have a range of conversations with him that were really enjoyable. And the first one is about why one should sign up for in-person tournaments. Let's have a listen. So if someone has only played Go online, like me, what is your elevator pitch for why they should sign up for a tournament?
Well, tournament, first of all, is a great place to meet people and experience real life Go, IRL Go. In my experience, it's a lot more fun. You get the tactile sensation of the stones like you do at Go clubs, of course, but it's also a very different experience. I feel like I play better in person, for example. I even feel like I play more kind of aggressive and more like Tasujis and stuff like that. Maybe a little sharper in person. I don't know what it is, right? Another thing is that for me, a lot of my biggest bursts in improvement, which for me tend to happen all at once, is from tournaments. Something about the atmosphere, the competitive pressure, the high quality games that everyone's trying really hard to win, and then people gathering around the board to review together. Great chance to get some comments randomly from strong players wandering around or your friends. Yeah, there's tournaments where I felt like I left them a stone stronger or kind of woke up the next day a stone stronger. It's crazy. When I train, I kind of have it in my mind that I'm training for tournaments rather than sort of training towards doing better in these online games.
Is that more because of the visual aspect? You could see yourself there physically in the game doing it. It's a more natural thing.
I sort of care about it more. So the games I really want to win are the real life games, the tournaments, especially the big events like Go Congress or Pro Qual, the North American Pro Qualifier, and things like that, right? Like long time setting. It's just the experience of Go that I find more enjoyable overall. It's similar to fast games versus slow games. So for me, I really enjoy slower games and I could go for hours and hours on a single game and not really run out of patience. So all the fast games I play on the Fox server and all that, I kind of see it as training towards the games that I actually want to play, which are the really long, high quality ones.
What are some of the unique aspects about playing in a tournament that can throw people off if they've never done it before? So using a time clock or certain etiquette during play, that sort of thing.
Oh man, so many things. There's like getting trouble sleeping before a tournament or traveling and then having some jet lag or not getting acclimated to the new environment, the new bed, the new city. I think it's nice to go a few days early if you can. Most people don't, I think, but I mean, it's just like more paying for hotel or whatever, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then of course the pressure, especially depending on the tournaments. So there's preparing for not only yourself, but the opponents, right? So if you know who you might be playing, you can sort of prepare against some of their complex joseki or this or that, right?
So when you think about favorite part of the tournament experience versus the least favorite part, what would you say?
Least favorite part of the tournament experience. For example, I had to play the Canadian Open. We were using these like chess clocks that have kind of like the flag thing that drops. And the horrible thing about that, we're doing Canadian Byoyomi, which is, I think, mainly used for managing like time in a tournament, right? But you don't get to see if you have 60 seconds or 30 seconds or 1 second left to play your like 5 stones or your 10 stones. So basically almost every game that I went to Byoyomi, I have to just kind of start spamming moves and play some bad moves. I even threw in some time sujis in there.
Can you clarify what a time suji is, please?
Yes. No, it's a play on Tesuji and kind of buying time. So especially in something like Canadian Byoyomi, where you have a certain number of stones to play in a certain number of minutes. In this case, it was 25 stones in 10 minutes, which is like 25 seconds per move, I think, something like that. When you need more thinking time, you can just play a random forcing move that they need to respond to, like an Atari in their territory. Of course, you lose co-threats doing that. It helps with Byoyomi too, just to refill that period. But, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Yeah, so the clocks, again, like the jet lag and stuff like that.
Are there some big do's or don'ts when you play in tournaments?
So you don't want to wrestle your stones around too much because that'll be distracting. Same thing with talking in general. Like one thing about the Canadian Open that I just came back from, it was actually a great tournament. It's very sort of high budget, I think. And they clearly put a lot into this one in Ottawa. One critique for it was that when people start to talk a lot as soon as they finish their games, there wasn't really a whole lot of noise control when it comes to people next to you talking about their game. Meanwhile, you're in the Byoyomi pressure. Or even like outside the door near us, there's a bunch of kids running around in the halls and screaming.
So it's just people at that point saying, hey, could you please keep it down? Something like that.
No one did. No one did.
God.
No one wanted to. Yeah. So the way I got over it was like, okay, my opponent is getting distracted from this too. So I'll just get through it.
With it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's some least favorite parts of it. And during the matches, if everybody's playing at the same time, which maybe isn't happening, can you hear a pin drop? I mean, does it get very quiet?
It gets very quiet. Yeah. You hear a lot of other people's clocks. You obviously hear a lot of stones. And if you're lucky, you don't really hear people talking too much or kids running around. As for like other etiquette things, right? So of course, no undos and no skating around with your stone. And
which means what? Sliding the stone around on the table?
Yeah. So you see it a lot with kids where they'll put a move down, but their arm is kind of covering the board and they just hold it there for a while to think. Yeah. So that's not the best. When I was 20 something Q, I would do that back at the Toronto Go Club.
Do you have any unique rituals for preparing for the day or before or after a match at a tournament?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, the basic, trying to get a good sleep and stuff. Other than that, I like to get a blitz game or some kind of go action in before the game, because otherwise when I play, I noticed that my first game of a tournament would always be the worst. So just getting your brain in the zone, right? Some Sumego can help. I think a good blitz game with some random person at the tournament really helps a lot. Just remembering about confidence. I never really thought too hard about confidence before until my friend Ryan Lee, I took some lessons from him. Probably going to do more. So he's one of the North American pros, right? In fact, many consider him to be the strongest player. So he was like really pushing this confidence thing on me. And when I finally took it really seriously, I finally started to get some wins against the kind of rank that I was just never winning against before, like people who are clearly higher level than me. So occasional wins, right? But before it was zero. So
was that like a set of sort of visualizations or affirmations or just some techniques to say, hey, psych yourself into understanding that you can do this?
To be honest, it was really just believing it in blind faith. I think maybe I did that with Fox Games first. My first experience with the confidence thing working was to think very seriously and ponder about what he had said, kind of just reflecting on the past, right? And then I started to perform well at the newest rank I had hit on Fox, right? But it happened exactly at the time that was like shortly after the confidence thing with Ryan. And then after that, in some of the tournaments, such as the Toronto Go Spectacular, among others, I started to finally nab some rare wins against people who are like 7-dan or strong 6-dan kind of people.
So you're Canadian 5-dan, is that correct?
Yeah, in terms of official rating.
We covered a lot of ground this episode, talking with Michael Chen, learning more about Shin Jin-seo as the top player in the world and how truly impressive he is. And then finally finishing up with playing in-person tournaments. So the question I want to leave with you is, what is a notable memory you have of playing in a tournament? And if you haven't played in a tournament, what will be that next opportunity to do so? So with that, we will end things and I will catch you next time.